The crash was loud and sudden. Jace didn't even remember hitting the ground. One moment, his ship had been flying smooth over the strange alien moon. The next, alarms were screaming and fire filled the cockpit. When he opened his eyes, everything was quiet. He expected pain, maybe death, but instead, he felt soft arms around him, carrying him through glowing mist. 3 figures moved through the haze, their skin shining like silver under the twin moons. They weren't human, that was clear. Tall, slender, with glowing eyes and long hair that moved like water. They whispered in a language Jace couldn't understand. But their voices were gentle, almost like a lullaby. His vision blurred again as sleep pulled him back. When he woke the second time, he was inside a warm cave. The walls sparkled with crystals, casting light across the stone. He tried to sit up, but a hand touched his chest, gently pushing him back down. One of the alien women knelt beside him, her head tilted like she was studying a rare animal. She smiled and made a humming sound, then offered him a bowl of something glowing. Jace hesitated, but his throat burned from thirst. He drank slowly. It was cool and sweet, and the pain in his body started to fade. He looked around, confused. Why were they helping him? Why didn't they just leave him in the wreck? And why did they carry him like he belonged to them? Every time he tried to speak, they answered with soft hands and calm voices. They didn't seem afraid of him. In fact, they looked at him with wonder. One wrapped his burned hand with silk threads that shimmered like starlight. Another placed strange blue leaves under his head like a pillow. He was injured, helpless, and still, they treated him with care. The youngest of the 3 sat by his side the longest. She was smaller than the others, with wide violet eyes that watched his every move. She touched his forehead often, like checking his warmth. Then she drew symbols on his arm with glowing powder. He didn't know what they meant, but she smiled after every stroke. Was it art? A healing ritual? Or something else entirely? Outside the cave, Jace could hear distant sounds, animals, wind, and soft voices echoing in the forest. He tried standing once, but his legs failed him. The aliens came running at once, catching him. Before he hit the ground, they didn't scold him, just carried him back like before. Strong arms under his back, another supporting his legs, like he was light as air, like he was precious. Too precious to let fall. He noticed something else strange. None of them let go of him for long. Whenever one left, another would replace her at his side. Even when he slept, he felt a warm presence nearby, like a silent promise. He was not alone, not anymore. Jace wasn't sure how to feel. He was used to space stations, machines, cold metal floors, not soft touches and glowing smiles. Were they doctors? Priests? Something else? He needed answers, but every time he asked, they only looked at him with gentle eyes. Their words were still a mystery, yet their actions were loud. They protected him, fed him, stayed with him, and carried him wherever he needed to go. One evening, as he lay watching the stars through a crack in the cave ceiling, the oldest alien woman stepped forward. She placed her hand on his chest, right over his heart. Then she spoke slowly. One clear word in his language. "Claimed," she said softly, then repeated it again. "Claimed." Jace's heart skipped. What did that mean? Was he part of a ritual? A tradition? Did they save him out of kindness or something else? He looked into her eyes but found no threat. Only calm, deep like the ocean. Still, unease crept into his chest. He was safe, yes. But safe from what? And for how long? He stared into the firelight that night, unable to sleep. The word echoed in his mind like a whisper on the wind. Claimed, carried like he was theirs. Because maybe, just maybe, to them, he already was. Jace woke to the sound of soft humming and the smell of warm herbs. He sat up slowly, his body still sore but stronger than before. The smallest alien girl was already by his side, waiting. She tilted her head and smiled, then reached out her hand. He took it and she gently helped him to his feet. For the first time, they let him walk, But they didn't walk away. One stayed in front of him, one beside, and one behind. They were guiding him. No, guarding him. Jace didn't know where they were taking him, but he followed. Not because he was forced, but because something inside told him to trust them. The path outside the cave was glowing, lit by stones that pulsed under their feet. Strange trees swayed above, with leaves like silk and branches that sang when the wind passed. It didn't feel like a planet of danger, but of mystery. Still, something in the silence made Jace's chest tight. No birds, no loud animals, only the wind and soft humming from the women. Soon the forest opened. Before him stood a village unlike anything he had seen. Tall, vine-covered structures grew from the earth like crystals. Bridges made of light connected the rooftops, and strange blue flames floated in the air. It was quiet, but not dead. He saw movement, shadows behind cloth walls, and glowing eyes watching from a distance. The three women stopped, and one let out a soft whistle. More aliens came, slowly, carefully, tall like the others, with glowing skin and long hair. They didn't speak, not yet, but they nodded at Jace. Some bowed. Others placed hands over their hearts. Jace felt like a visitor, but also something more, something expected. A group of children ran out from behind a shelter. They laughed in high tones, strange and musical. One of them pointed at Jace and gasped. The women beside him said something in their language, gentle but firm. The children backed away, but smiled wide before vanishing between the huts. Jace looked around. There were no old ones, no elderly faces, no guards, no machines. Only people moving slowly, living simply. And still, the silence continued. No shouting, no laughter like humans. Everything here was quiet, almost sacred. He was led to a circular platform made of stone and vines. There, a woman with silver tattoos on her face waited. She was older than the rest, her eyes darker and more serious. She looked at Jace for a long time, then spoke a few words. He didn't understand them, but her tone was warm, respectful. Then she touched her forehead, then his. The others clapped gently, a soft rhythm like raindrops. After that, they gave him a place to rest. A round shelter with walls of glowing fabric that changed color with the sky. Inside, a soft bed waited, made of leaves and woven threads. No door, just a curtain. But outside, one of the three women sat guard through the night. Even when he slept, Jace knew he was being watched. Not as a threat, but as someone precious. The next day they showed him more. They led him through gardens where fruits grew from the ground. He tried one, and it was sweet, like honey and berries. They showed him pools of water that healed small wounds. He dipped his hand in one and watched as the scratches faded. Everywhere he looked, the village gave life, but still no one explained why they brought him here. One afternoon, he saw a group of aliens gathered near the edge of the forest. They stood in a circle, holding hands, heads bowed. He stepped closer, and one of the women quickly held his arm, stopping him. Her face was calm, but serious. She whispered, a word he didn't understand, then placed her hand on his chest, over his heart. Then she pointed at the sky. He looked up but saw only clouds. That night, he sat outside his shelter, watching the glowing trees sway in the breeze. He felt strange. Not just like a visitor, but like something more. Why were they treating him like this? Why had they carried him here, fed him, protected him, and now given him a home? It wasn't fear and it wasn't slavery. It was something deeper, something older. He just didn't know what it was yet. He lay back on the soft bed, staring at the glowing ceiling above. The youngest alien came to his side again. She rested her head on his shoulder and whispered the same word the elder had said, Choshai. Jace closed his eyes, letting the word echo in his mind. He didn't know its meaning, but somehow he felt it would change everything. Jace had started to feel calm in the silent village. He didn't fully understand their language, but the way they treated him felt gentle. The food, the rest, the healing. They were all gifts. But still, he had questions. Why him? Why was he brought here and cared for like something sacred? Then came the night that changed everything. The sky turned violet, stars blinking brighter than ever. One of the alien women, Neela, the leader of the three, entered his shelter. She carried a folded cloth and a small crystal bowl filled. With glowing blue paint, her face was calm, but her hands trembled slightly. She placed the cloth in his lap, then stepped back. Jace looked down. It was a long robe, soft and golden, almost weightless. She pointed to it, then to him, and smiled. He understood. It was for him to wear. Outside, drums began to beat slow and deep like heartbeats. Neela and the others helped him dress, then led him through the glowing paths. The village had changed. Lights floated in the air. The trees shimmered with soft colors. Everyone was gathered in a wide open area with stone circles and fire. Bowls as he entered, the aliens bowed low. Children tossed petals at his feet, and the drumming grew louder. He was led to the center where a seat carved from crystal waited. He sat, confused but silent. Then the three women began circling him, holding small bowls and painting his skin with glowing marks. They whispered, words with each stroke, words full of meaning he couldn't yet understand. The blue lines wrapped around his arms, chest, and face. The warmth from the paint sank into his skin, making it tingle. It didn't feel like simple decoration. It felt ancient. Suddenly, the crowd stopped moving, and the drums fell silent. From the edge of the circle, the elder woman stepped forward. She held a large crystal that pulsed with soft light. With slow steps, she approached Jace and placed the crystal against his chest. He felt a sudden rush. Light flooded his mind, his heart, his whole body. Then a voice. Not outside, but inside. Him, it whispered. Do you accept the bond? He gasped, looking at the elder. She was still silent, her face peaceful, but he heard her words in his mind. We carried you not because you were weak, the voice said, but because you were meant. Jace couldn't speak, but his breath came fast. The symbols on his body glowed brighter, pulsing with the rhythm of his heartbeat. The crystal in her hand dimmed, then faded, but the warmth stayed in his chest. The elder stepped back and raised both hands. Everyone in the circle followed, humming together in one long note. It echoed through the trees and sky like a call to the stars. Then slowly the humming faded, and silence returned. Neela came forward and knelt before him. She reached out and placed a silver chain around his neck. A smooth stone hung from it, glowing the same color as the paint on his skin. Then she looked into his eyes and whispered a word he could now understand. Chosen. Jace's head spun. He had no idea what this bond meant. Was it a welcome? A wedding? A destiny? He stood slowly, the robe shining in the firelight. Everyone clapped gently, the sound like falling leaves. That night, he didn't return to his shelter. Instead, he was led to a new one, larger, at the heart of the village. Inside were 3 soft beds, one already occupied by the smallest alien girl. She smiled sleepily and whispered, Choshai, the word he'd heard before. Now he understood. It meant ours. Neela entered last, sitting beside him as he rested on the bed. She didn't speak, just placed her hand over the stone, on his chest, then hers over her own heart. Jace stared at her in the dim glow. He didn't run, didn't question. He just closed his eyes. Something in him knew. He had become part of something far bigger than he expected. Not just a visitor or survivor, but part of a sacred link, an ancient promise. He had been marked, not as property, but as one of them. The next morning, Jace sat on the edge of his new bed, staring at the silver stone on his chest. It was warm again, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. The markings on his body had faded into faint blue lines like gentle shadows beneath his skin. Everything felt different now, heavier, deeper. He had questions building in his mind, and finally he needed answers. He stepped outside, greeted by soft nods and open palms. The villagers no longer looked at him like a guest. They looked at him like one of their own. He tried to smile back, but his thoughts spun like a storm. Neela found him near the crystal pool, where light swirled across the water. She knelt beside him, then touched the stone on his chest. "Feel it?" she asked, her voice slow, her words in clear English now. Jace blinked, startled. "You can speak my language?" He whispered. "Only now," she said, tapping the stone. "It connects minds, but only after the bond." Jace stared at her, the truth sinking in. "You knew I wouldn't understand," he said. "Yet you marked me, carried me, brought me here." Nyla looked away for a moment, then spoke. "We followed the old ways," she said gently, "the ways of Choshai." She reached into a pouch and pulled out a tiny glowing hole, scroll unfolding it in the air. The image that appeared was shocking. It was a human dressed in armor, different, older, but clearly human. He stood beside 3 alien women, their hands touching his shoulders. Below it were symbols, swirling in patterns Jace recognized from the ritual. "He came before?" Jace asked. Nyla nodded slowly. "Many star?" "Cycles ago," she said. "He came from the sky, injured like you." "And you bonded him too?" he asked. Nyla looked sad. "He did not accept it," she replied. "He left, and with him, the forest darkened. Sickness returned. We were lost." Jace's heart tightened. "So now you thought I was—" "What? A second chance?" She nodded, eyes wet with light. "You came during the signal moon. You fell where the starfire once struck, and the winds led us to you." She placed her hand on his again. "We didn't mean to trap you," she whispered. "We meant to protect the, last hope." Jace stood pacing near the water's edge. "You healed me, fed me, gave me shelter, but never asked me what I wanted," he said. Nyla's voice softened. "Because we feared your answer." For the first time, he saw the pressure they had carried. This wasn't just about tradition. It was about survival, about belief. They weren't trying to chain him, they were trying to save themselves. Later, the elder called for him. He was led to a quiet chamber beneath a glowing tree. There, she sat with an old book in her lap, made of plant fibers and glowing ink. She opened it to a page with a map, a star chart. Jace recognized Earth among the symbols. "You are the second human," she said, her voice rough but kind. "Only 2 ever came." "Why us?" Jace asked. "Because your kind carries chaos and fire," she said, "but also heart. And the bond, when chosen freely, is strong." She looked up at him with tired eyes. "We marked you by old law," she continued, "but we offer the choice now, fully awake, fully yours." She reached into a pouch and placed 2 stones before him. One blue, one gray. Blue, you stay, and we teach, and you live with us. Gray, you leave, and we send you to the high cliffs where the sky may take you. Jace stared at both stones, his heart pounded. He thought of Earth, his home, his people, his world. Then he thought of Nyla, her soft voice, her gentle hands, her fear of being abandoned. He thought of the silence in the village, the pain behind their peace, and the strange way they looked at him, not with power, but with hope. He picked up both stones, one in each hand. He held them for a long time, staring at the colors, feeling the weight. Then slowly he let the gray one fall. It hit the floor and cracked, fading into dust. The elder smiled. "You have chosen," she whispered. But Jace wasn't smiling. "I'm not staying because of old ways," he said. "I'm staying because I want to understand, and maybe help." That night, the stars above the village glowed brighter than ever. The wind carried whispers of ancient songs, and in the heart of the village a new fire was lit, not of tradition, but of choice. Jace tried to sleep that night, but the village felt different. Everything around him was soft, warm, and glowing. Yet inside his chest, something heavy grew. He had chosen to stay, but had he truly known what that choice meant? He rose quietly, careful not to wake Nyla or the young girl beside her. The soft hum of the crystals above their bed cast flickering light over their faces. They looked peaceful, trusting. That made it harder. He stepped out into the quiet night. The village was still, except for the blue lights drifting like lazy fireflies. He didn't know what he was looking for, maybe just air, maybe freedom. He walked slowly at first, then faster. The forest welcomed him like an old memory. The glowing stones under his feet lit his path, but he avoided them. He walked along the edge, through the shadows. He didn't want them to follow, didn't want them to see him leaving. Every step he took made the air feel colder. The trees whispered, not loud, but enough to make his skin tighten. He looked back once, no one behind him. Still, his legs moved faster. Why was he running? They never chained him, never hurt him. But they did bind him with their silence, their rituals, their hope. And hope, Jace realized, could be its own kind of prison. He reached the edge of the forest where the glowing stopped. Beyond it was a steep hill leading to rocky ground. Somewhere out there, he believed the escape pods had landed. Maybe one still worked. Maybe he could call for help. Maybe he could just disappear. He slipped on the rocks but caught himself. A strange fog rose from the ground, cold and thick. He moved slower now, the air biting at his skin. Then he heard it, a growl, low and close. Jace froze. From the shadows came eyes, dozens of them. Small creatures, fast and hungry-looking, surrounded him in seconds. Their fangs glowed like tiny blades in the dark. He picked up a branch, waved it, shouted, but they crept closer, snarling, clicking their teeth, tails swishing through the dirt. One leapt and Jace swung wildly, missing. Another jumped from behind, claws scraped his back. He cried out, stumbling to the ground. The creatures moved in. But suddenly, a sharp whistle echoed through the air. A flash of light burst beside him. Blinding and hot. The creatures shrieked and scattered into the mist. When Jace opened his eyes, Neela stood above him, weapon in hand. Beside her, the other two alien women stood like shadows with fire in their eyes. She didn't speak. Not at first. She just dropped to her knees and checked his wounds. Her hands were shaking. "I wasn't running away," Jace whispered. But she didn't reply. She wrapped his arm, tore a piece of her own robe to stop the bleeding on his back. Then finally, she looked into his eyes. "You were," she said softly. And it hurt more than the claws did. Jace looked away, ashamed. "I thought I needed space," he said. "I didn't understand everything and I panicked." Neela nodded slowly. "You are not trapped here," she said. "But leaving without telling us, that breaks the bond of trust." She helped him stand, though her eyes held pain. The walk back to the village was slow, quiet. He expected the others to be angry or cold. But instead, the villagers welcomed him with silent concern. They brought him warm water, clean cloth, and a new robe. No words, no punishment, just care. That night, Neela sat beside him again. She placed her hand on his chest, where the stone still glowed, but dimmer now. "The bond is not magic," she said. "It's made of choice, of actions. Can it break?" he asked, voice low. She nodded. "If it breaks, we grieve," she said. "But we do not force you to stay." Jace looked into the fire, watching it flicker. "I don't know what I want yet," he admitted. Neela nodded once more. "Then we wait, together or apart," she whispered, "until you know." The stars outside blinked quietly, like watching eyes in the sky. Jace lay down, heart torn between two paths. But for the first time, the choice truly felt his, and that made all the difference. The morning sun rose quietly over the village, casting golden light across the glowing trees. Jace opened his eyes to a soft hum outside his shelter. It wasn't music. Not exactly. It was the sound the villagers made when working together, gathering fruit, stitching fabrics, singing without words. For the first time in days, he didn't feel like an outsider listening in. He felt like he belonged to the rhythm, even if only a little. His back still ached from the attack, but the wounds were healing fast. The crystal water and herbal paste had worked wonders. Nyla had stayed by his side through the night, quiet, but present. She didn't hold his hand, didn't speak much, but her silence no longer felt cold. It felt like understanding. That morning she brought him a simple object, a round disc made of soft metal, with threads woven through it. "This is our bond wheel," she said, placing it in his hands. "It is unfinished." Jace turned it slowly, noticing the threads weren't tied. One thread was gold, one was silver, one was blue, each thin and shining in its own way. "We tie them together when a bond is complete," Neela explained. "When trust is full and both hearts agree." She looked at him, her voice softer now. "Right now it is yours to choose." Jace stared at the wheel, speechless. A strange warmth filled his chest, not from magic, not from the stone, but something real. He didn't know the exact moment things changed inside him. Maybe it was when she fought the beasts to protect him. Maybe it was the night she said, "We wait." Or maybe it had always been there, growing quietly between silences and smiles. He spent the next few days walking through the village, this time not alone. Children waved and ran beside him, offering him small crystals and glowing leaves. The old ones nodded with kind eyes, and the 3 alien women, his silent guardians, began to laugh more freely around him. He started helping with small tasks, lifting stones, carrying baskets, cleaning tools. It wasn't much, but it mattered. Every action felt like stitching his heart into the fabric of their world. One evening, the young girl with violet eyes sat beside him as he watched the sunset. She didn't speak, just pointed at the sky and traced a shape in the air, a shape of a star, then a heart. Then she placed her hand over his chest and giggled. Jace couldn't help but smile. He placed his hand over hers, then over his bond stone. Something clicked, quiet and soft, like a puzzle piece falling into place. That night, Jace sat with Neela by the edge of the healing pool. The stars above were clear, the water below still. He held the bond wheel in his lap, the 3 threads loose but waiting. "I don't fully understand your ways," he said, "but I know I don't want to leave." Neela's eyes shined in the moonlight. "And I don't want you to stay out of pity," she replied. Jace shook his head slowly. "I'm staying because I feel something here," he said. "Something real." She reached over and touched the golden thread. "Then tie the threads," she whispered. Not with hands, but with meaning. Jace thought for a moment, then he placed the wheel in the water, let it float. With slow movements, he placed one thread through the silver loop, another through the blue ring, and the last he tied in a knot that connected all 3. The wheel began to glow softly. Spinning once, then resting in the water, Nyla touched it, then leaned forward and rested her forehead against his. In that moment, the stone on his chest pulsed with warmth. Their minds brushed together, not thoughts, but emotions. Trust, warmth, safety, and something deeper. "You are now part of our story," she whispered. "Not just a visitor from the stars, but a thread in our bond." Jace smiled, feeling peace like he never had before. No noise, no pressure, no confusion, just connection. In a world of glowing trees and silent voices, his heart had finally found something steady, and as the stars turned overhead, 2 hearts beat in rhythm, not by force, not by fear, but by choice. Jace stood before the village circle again, but this time, not as a stranger. He wore no golden robe, no glowing paint, just simple cloth, stitched by the hands of those who now called him family. The soft morning mist curled around the trees like breath from the earth itself, and every villager gathered in quiet calm. This wasn't a ceremony, this was a moment of truth. The elder woman, bent with age but sharp in spirit, stepped forward. In her hands was the bond wheel Jace had tied. It shimmered gently in the light, held together not by magic but meaning. She raised it for all to see, then placed it in his palms. "Today," she said softly, "you speak not for us, but for yourself." Jace took a breath, the kind that fills the lungs and quiets the mind. He turned slowly, looking at the faces around him. The children who once hid behind trees now smiled freely. The men and women who watched him with caution now stood tall beside him. Neela stood near the healing pool, her hands folded at her chest. She didn't look hopeful or afraid. She just waited. Jace stepped forward and placed the wheel on a flat stone in the center. He touched the knot he had made, still tight, still strong. Then he spoke, his voice steady. "I came here by accident," he said. "Fell from the stars, broken and lost. You carried me when I couldn't walk," he continued. "Fed me, healed me, gave me more than shelter." He looked toward Neela. "You gave me trust even when I didn't understand it." He paused, looking at the faces around him. "I tried to run, not because I hated this place, but because I was afraid. But you didn't punish me," he said. "You waited." He turned back to the stone, placing both hands on the wheel. "I'm not staying because of a bond ritual or an old law," he said. "I'm staying because this place has taught me something. That being carried is not weakness," he said slowly. "It's love." The wind stirred softly, rustling the crystal leaves above. The villagers closed their eyes, many with tears glowing in the corners. Neela stepped forward slowly, her voice quiet but full of emotion. "Then the bond is sealed, not by hands, not by stone, but by choice." She opened her hand and revealed a new thread. Red and shimmering, Jace took it and tied it around the others. A fourth thread, the thread of choice. The wheel glowed brightly for a moment, then dimmed into a warm, steady light. The elder smiled, stepping back. The crowd began a low hum, the same hum Jace had heard his first night here. But now it felt different, not foreign, familiar. That night the village lit a fire, not for ceremony but for celebration. There was dancing, slow and elegant, like flowing wind. Jace sat near the flames, watching the way the people moved in rhythm with the earth. The little girl with violet eyes pulled his hand. She tugged him gently toward the circle. Laughing, he danced, clumsy at first, but free. And when he turned, Neela was there. She said nothing, only placed her hands in his. They moved together, one step, then another. Two lives once far apart, now weaving into the same path. Later, that evening as the stars covered the sky like a blanket, Jace sat on the high ridge above the village. Nyla sat beside him, her head on his shoulder. "You could still leave," she whispered, not asking, just speaking truth. Jace nodded slowly. "I know," he said, "but I don't want to." She looked at him, eyes glowing like the moons above. "Then you are one of us," she said. Jace took her hand, squeezed it gently. "No," he whispered, smiling. "We are one together." Far above, a streak of light crossed the sky. A shooting star. Jace didn't make a wish. He didn't need to. He already had everything he didn't know he was looking for. Not just healing, not just safety, but a place, a purpose. And hearts that carried his without asking for anything in return. In a world of quiet voices and glowing trees, the loudest truth was simple. He was home,